Welcome, everybody, to our new live YouTube series, Conscious Conversations. We are excited. Your hosts, first and foremost, Chris and Sara, with our guest, Lily Mouse. She's our neighbor's dog who's out of town. We're babysitting him.
She had to join us tonight for this lovely conversation.
Yes, and this episode is all about leaving your comfort zone. So for those of you new to Conscious Conversations, we literally just have a chat. We just talk. This is not bullet points. This is not scripted, nothing. This is just my husband and I having a nice casual conversation about topics that we are so steeped in throughout our days,
yes.
Day in and day out.
It's an understatement.
Both personally, because we are doing the work for our own personal development, but also because of the people that we work with and help guide them on their personal development, self-discovery journey. So you're in the right place for tonight's episode. If you find yourself often getting stuck, I don't want to say the mundane, but maybe you find yourself getting stuck in a routine. Maybe you find yourself a little, feeling a little trepidation about change, about anything that might be unfamiliar. Leaving your comfort zone, that ranges from like the tiniest of things to like the biggest life decisions. So you are in the right place. If you want to join us in this conversation, please feel free to share your thoughts in the chat window, ask your questions. We want this to feel like a roundtable discussion. And enjoy yourselves, enjoy the conversation. Like I said, we don't script these videos.
No, this is all free flow.
We're just having a chat with Lily. If you didn't see her already,
she might chime in a little bit.
Lily is the biggest, most loving dog in the world, and I just love her. So anyway, if you missed last episode, that was all about the trust component of clarity, and I feel like that leads into our topic that one of you viewers suggested us cover. Leaving your comfort zone.
Yes, we have a whole whiteboard, as we said before, with all the different topics, and we just go in and just put our finger on one and we'll let it ride.
And that was this one, leaving your comfort zone.
Man.
So I already know, just because I'm married to you, what your biggest
It was my biggest, but I've had several.
Leaving your comfort zone.
Yeah, absolutely. Which was obviously, as I've discussed before, because it's been an instrumental part of my life, was going to the Peace Corps. That was just like that one of those major decisions. It doesn't have to be that major. That's the thing. So I was thinking about this a little bit today, just reflecting back on when that time was, what was going on at that time? How was I feeling emotionally, physically, everything at that time? And obviously that was a very crucial and major decision, but I've had several, I think we all have several in which we have to leave our comfort zone a little bit, and they don't always have to be that grand either. Mine just happened to be, so.
Oh man, yeah, like the different degrees of comfort in leaving that comfort. I can remember.
You gotta take steps, I think.
I can remember primary school, elementary school. Remember how terrifying it was to go to a new school? That was like the biggest deal for me, to go to a new school. And if I didn't express it outwardly, I was petrified as a kid. Because what is it about comfort that makes us stick? What is it about comfort that keeps us in one place? I know as a kid, having the first experience of trying something new, going to a new location without anybody that you're familiar with, that was terrifying, but you had to do it, right?
Yeah, you have to do it. And it's interesting, going back on all those little times, they're almost training you for those bigger moments in life, like the grand moments that I was just talking about.
Yeah. Well, because imagine if we never experienced leaving our comfort zone at age 3, 4, 5, 6, even to teenage years, how would we?
And it's also terrifying. It's also, again, back to the bigger decisions, they seem really hard, really scary, really difficult.
But imagine how much scarier they would be if we didn't have those previous steps to get there.
Yep.
And it's interesting because I think, having worked with so many clients on this subject, their major fears are of change. So you can equate leaving your comfort zone with change. Without a doubt, if you leave your comfort zone, things will change. Whether it's something tiny, maybe you take a different bus, I don't know, to work, things might change. What if you get there at a different time? What if you sit next to a different person than you're used to seeing on that same commute? Like, you never know. You're rolling the dice, and that's just a small example. But
And that gets into some timeline shifting stuff
right,
too, which is a whole
another
other conversation.
But I think this fear of change, no matter how big or how small, is enough to keep someone stuck.
Mm.
But then the question is, what's beyond that fear of change? We all know that some people are afraid of change. I am sometimes afraid of change. I know if you're a human being, sometimes you're afraid of change. But what's the fears that's underneath the fear of change? And that's where the gold mine is.
It is. And I'm glad you brought that up. And the first thing that comes to mind, the absolute first word that comes to me is failure.
Mm-hmm. That's got to be like the most popular fear of failure.
Fear of failure. So there's different fears underneath the main fear of change,
Mm-hmm.
but that's not always the root fear.
Mm-hmm.
So we can go down the rabbit hole with that. And, fear of failure is almost, it is the first thing that comes up in my mind, because I can look back and think back, oh, well, I wonder if this doesn't work out. What's going to happen then? I don't know if this is such a good idea,
What if I can't do it well enough, whatever that change is?
Yeah. Wonder if I look bad to others for having committed to this thing, and then for some reason it doesn't work out. Well, how do I look? And that's where status comes in. Absolutely.
Wow. So I think a lot of people are afraid of losing their status.
Yep, for sure.
But isn't it funny that the biggest growth comes from taking risks? The biggest growth comes from rolling the dice. And I think when we keep ourselves stuck, imagine all the opportunities we are cutting ourselves off from, all the opportunities that are around us consistently, but we never experience them because we're too afraid that we're going to fail. I know one of our clients recently, she wrote a list of all of her fears about change. And I thought this was brilliant. Let me see if I can remember them off the top of my head. One of them was, what if I don't like the changes I'm going to have to make as I start changing? Because you don't know what else is going to come at you as you start leaving your comfort zone. Yep. You might be faced with another thing that requires you to leave your comfort zone. And I find it's like pulling a string of pearls. It's just going to
keeps revealing itself.
And so if you get yourself out of the first comfort zone, her fear, for example, was, what if I am not going to like the changes that keep coming, the changes I know I'm going to have to make to get to where I ideally want to be? And that was a good one. Another fear that she had surrounding leaving her comfort zone, surrounding change, was, now this one just like shook me to the core. When I read it, I had goosebumps all over. What if I make the change and I'm still unhappy?
Ooh, that's,
What if I make the changes and I'm still unhappy? What if I leave my comfort zone and I'm still unhappy?
It doesn't work out. That's still like, there's kind of brings in failure too,
A failure to be happy.
Exactly.
Isn't that interesting that we put all that pressure on us to have?
We do. And when that's built up pressure from all these years of people putting pressure on us.
You know what I just realized as we're talking about that is that people are terrified to admit, and I've been there, I'm sure I'll still be there sometimes. People are terrified to admit when they've made a change, when they've left their comfort zone and it didn't work out well. They're not happy with what the result was. They found, in fact, the grass was not necessarily greener. In fact, the grass was dead. And then you have everybody asking you, oh, how's it going? How did it go? You were so brave. You left your comfort zone. You did this. You made the changes. And you're miserable. And I've been there. I've totally like, oh, yeah, everything's great.
Yeah, it's awesome right now.
Everything's so cool. Made the changes and it sucks. I feel like that's a status thing again.
It is. It's absolutely a status thing. And it's funny because reading what's the book that I'm reading right now, and he talks about status and expert secrets. And he talks about status in the sense that whether it's, we can look at status as like an elitist thing, but we all carry status in regards to our beliefs and everything and how we hold ourselves up. And it doesn't matter who you are. And when you really go down the rabbit hole within your mind, you do find this out. And this is a huge thing with change, is status.
You're risking either raising your perceived status or lowering your perceived status based on what you perceive to be raising and lowering, right? Which is all subjective, depending on what we measure as success.
Exactly.
Or the reputation we wish to uphold. And so there's a lot at risk with leaving your comfort zone when you break down even more fears.
Yeah.
I
mean, we'll talk about growth for a second. The amount of growth, people are scared to grow within themselves. It's, again, that comfortability, kind of staying, behind the scenes a little bit. They don't want to put themselves out there fully. They don't want to, their authentic selves are just kind of hiding in the shadows. And, it takes growth to get to that point to say, whatever, like, this is me, this is who I am. Like, it's taken me a long time to really bring that out. And that's terrifying to like really show your true colors, show who you are as a person. And I think it's all vulnerability. Everything is vulnerability. And that's tough, man. Like it's taken a long time to get to that point, and I'm still like opening up more and more to that.
Because think about growing, leaving your comfort zone, whether it's mentally or physically, the risk of who will you lose through the expression of you coming into your fullest self, your truest self. Who will you lose? Which people will not accept you for your truest self, which only emerges after leaving one's comfort zone repetitively. And that's really scary to think about.
The first thing that comes to mind is when we became vegan. You remember when we became vegan, it was a huge lifestyle change. And when that happened, I was terrified to tell anybody that I was actually vegan, because it was like, it was like weird thing where I was like, okay, well, am I not going to fit in anymore and any of that? And then I started getting vocal about it and being angry vegan and all the stages of veganism and all that, but that's another conversation. But the point is that I was really scared to show those colors, and that was a huge change in my life. But it was terrifying in that sense.
But if you never would have put yourself out there, if you never would have left your comfort zone, it would have been much more comfortable to keep to yourself.
Yep.
If you never would have left that comfort zone, you never would have gained all of the people in your life who accept you for who you are.
Yep.
And I think that's where we have to kind of cut our losses. Like, as blunt as it sounds, like, if you're just no longer an energetic match for someone, you're just no longer an energetic match. And I know that there's grieving that comes with cutting losses. Sometimes I still go through that mourning process where I wish that connection were still there. But when you cut those losses, you make space for new. And I think that's a lot of people's fear about leaving one's comfort zone, is what are they going to lose through that change? Yeah.
I mean, just thinking about I'm replaying everything through my mind over the past, 4 years since we met each other, and thinking about all of this stuff of all of the different losses that we both grieved. And those have been really difficult. But you know what? When you think about it and you look at it as a broad picture, you step back and you see all the beautiful things that came from it, like magical things that you would have never thought could have happened in your life. Things that you couldn't even dream of are happening. Like, it's insane. It's amazing. So those losses, they really, everything balances itself out when you live in that flow state, and you really look at everything that you're absolutely grateful for, because there's been so many amazing things that have come from all of the changes. But it's not easy. It's hard. It's really difficult at times. But you know what? It's the best journey you can go on.
And it's a journey that you can go on when you believe that you are capable.
Absolutely.
When you believe that you
Trust.
are worthy, when you believe that all of us deserve this sort of experience, and that can only come from first that core belief, but
Mhm.
done through practice to show yourself that when you do leave your comfort zone, you are in fact growing in the direction for your highest good.
Yeah. And it's, I don't think it ever really stops either. Once you really make that decision, conscious decision to say that, you're going to accept everything that comes, there's a lot of change that happens. That doesn't stop, but it keeps you elevated. It keeps you going, really. It's being alive.
Mhm.
It's simply, when you break it down, it's being alive. It's feeling alive for the first time. That's when I think about change and growth and all those crazy decisions. I think about like being alive. Like, I feel like before there was points where I just
In your
was,
stagnancy, in your comfort zone, you talking
yeah,
about
and
before?
yes, and when I say that, that's what I mean. But I felt, so I was just existing.
Just kind of coasting.
I was just existing. I wasn't living. I was
Mhm.
existing. It was like turning the battery at 50% where it could be at 100. It's
Right.
like, just
It's
turn
not
it
quite
down.
at 0.
No.
It's not at 100.
But I'm
It's
just going through the
50.
motions. I'm getting through life. I'm doing what I'm doing, which is great. There's always good stuff, good relationships that come from there. And, not that it's a bad place to be, but you want to feel alive. You
Leave
want
your
to
comfort
feel
zone.
invigorated. Leave your comfort zone. If you
Leave
want
your
somebody, if
comfort
you
zone.
want an adrenaline rush of a lifetime, you don't have to go jump out of a plane at 10,000 feet. You don't have to go jump off a cliff at a 300-foot cliff.
You don't have to move to Africa.
You don't have to move to Africa. But it is, you want an adrenaline rush. Just leave your comfort zone.
And so we kind of touched up on why people don't leave their comfort zones. We touched up on the fear that's holding them back from the unknown, right? The lack of trust, that self-doubt component, the fear of failure, the fear of making the changes and not being happy, just fear, right? This is keeping us in our comfort zone. And we've kind of touched up on what you get out of leaving your comfort zone, right? You get life, you live, you feel vibrant. And I think that people, right now, I know that people probably watching are probably, well, okay, so I'm stuck in my comfort zone. You're telling me what I can get if I leave the comfort zone. So how do I get there? How do I go from A to Z? And that's the interesting thing, because I think, maybe a couple generations above us might just say, well, you just do it.
Yeah,
just leave your comfort zone. And it's funny because, as blunt as it is, and obviously not the whole answer, it's a very big component of just do it. Just do it. Now, there's a whole million things, not million, that sounds really overwhelming. There's a whole bunch of things that have to happen for you to do it, right?
Well, I think there's different catalysts. So I think, if we reflect back on some catalysts, right, it could be a loss of a major relationship, in your life. You could be going through a terrible breakup, and it's a catalyst to say, all right, you know what, I've had enough. Like,
even the breakup itself, though, is leaving the comfort zone, because aren't we often complacent in our relationships?
Very true. So that's a small step to the big step, right?
Yeah. And then you can break that down into even smaller steps.
Yep.
Maybe it's out of your comfort zone to have a verbal communication with your partner that you feel the relationship has come to a close. Maybe it's out of your comfort zone to even admit to yourself that relationship has come to a close. Obviously, this relationship is just the example.
Yeah.
But there are tiny little things that you have to do to build yourself up to get out of that comfort zone.
Absolutely.
And one of our clients, she had a brilliant idea. So after I was coaching her through a lot of uncovering her fears around change, she had this, she found all the limiting beliefs, I'm not capable, I'm not good enough at doing this, right? So that kept her playing small. That kept her not taking risks, right? She knew what she was capable of, but it wasn't the grandiose things. It wasn't even really trying much of anything outside of her routine. But after we pinpointed all those beliefs and changed them into new empowering ones that felt true for where she was, to keep the energy alive, to keep the momentum going, she wanted to choose an action to try out. And that was on a day off, where she would normally use that day as a chance to catch up with chores and do her routine.
Mm-hmm.
She was going to deliberately break that routine and choose to do one small thing that she wouldn't normally do. And in this case, she chose to explore this trail out by her house that she'd never properly explored. She doesn't like being outside much. I won't get into all the details. But this represented to her the breaking of the routine itself was the first step. And finding something unknown to do. It could be cooking a new recipe when you're really not even much of a chef. It could be, I don't know, going to a night of bowling instead of a night at the bar. Like just the tiniest little tweaks and changes that prove to us that, hey, we can handle whatever changes are coming our way. We can choose to have fun with whatever's on the other side of the unknown. Even if we don't end up really liking what's on the other side, we can use that as an experience to show us, okay, tried to go here, didn't particularly enjoy it. What should I learn about myself in this experience? No, let's try something else. You know?
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because those are very like prime examples of the day-to-day things that we can do. And so routine is so great for so many things. Having a routine in certain aspects is really important.
I like to say having a practice.
I like that.
Than a routine.
I like that. That's actually, I like that shift in language. That's much better. Yeah, because I practice, we can definitely go with that. But having a practice, something that you're dedicated to each day is something nice. But there comes a time where you have to be spontaneous and shake things up a little bit and to do different things. Take a risk. You know, I don't know if anything, I don't like to even use the word risk because nothing really to me is a risk anymore.
What do you mean?
So like taking a risk to me is, I don't know. I guess I can't, it's hard for me because I feel so fearless in so many ways now that I've had so many changes.
And survived them all.
And
even when they weren't easy.
And I feel great. So like there is no risks to me. And that's hard to explain. Sure, there's probably smarter decisions than others. And you want to look at that a little bit. But the point is that every situation, no matter whether it leads you down a positive road, a good road, or a negative or seemingly bad road, it's all amazing when you look at it. You know, and that's so hard to explain to somebody that has experienced a lot of suffering, a lot of trauma, a lot of pain, and all of that. But when you really start to dig within yourself, you see that those things are all so beneficial to where you are today. You know, the best example, we were talking about relationships before and having these breakups, and they're so friggin' like, they're just crazy at the time. Like
they're awful.
It's really terrible. You know, your heart is broken. You feel like shit, and you're in that state for who knows, few weeks, few months, whatever it is. But then you look back on those times, you're like, oh my God, that was the best decision ever, you know, or something like that. Or
in hindsight,
like I'm so glad it worked out because it worked out for the other person. They're doing great, which is awesome. I'm doing great. So, but at the time, it's so difficult, and we get caught up in that.
Once again, it's the act of doing.
Yep.
And so, you know, doing these little things each day to help us push ourselves out of our comfort zone. It could be so much as instead of, I don't know, texting someone that you haven't talked to in a while, giving them a call. Maybe that's out of your comfort zone. Maybe talking on the phone is not really your thing.
You remember back in like 1994 when you'd actually call people?
To call people, yeah. Well, I mean, I was like 4.
Hi, Mrs. Smith. Is Sally there?
Oh, you mean, yeah.
Calling people on the phone. You know, we don't have that anymore, but that's all another topic.
Maybe we should add that to the list.
We should. I digress a little bit.
And I think doing these little small things that push us out of our comfort zone is great, but we also need to reflect on the experience. You know, don't just do it and then forget about it. Do it and then think about it. Like, okay, how did I feel prior to leaving my comfort zone? How did I feel when I actually left my comfort zone? You know, tune into your body. What was it telling you? What's it telling you now? and then reflect on the experience.
Mhm.
You don't have to attach the good or the bad label to it, but just reflecting on the experience helps you to increase your awareness so that the next time an opportunity presents itself for you to leave your comfort zone, you can build that muscle, right, that we were talking about, and reflect back to how your body felt. How did you feel then? What's your body like now? What are you feeling now? And so you just get used to thinking about yourself in those transitory periods.
Yeah, and now that you mentioned that, actually something came to mind was that a great practice, right? So an awesome practice would be journaling throughout this time, right? Writing everything down and tapping into those feelings you were just talking about. Or better yet, if you're doing some like crazy thing and it's something that's different in your life and you're just changing things up, record yourself, tape yourself, talk about yourself as you're going through that. How are you feeling? What's going on? And then you can reflect back on that, months, a year later, however long you want, as you film throughout this process. And if you want to be super vulnerable, you can throw it online and
inspire someone else to leave their comfort zone. Why do you think we all love road trip movies? We love road trip movies.
Mm-hmm.
We love road trip documentaries. We love news stories that talk about people who left home to go like halfway around the world to do some crazy thing. And it's a metaphor for mentally leaving your comfort zone too. Like we all yearn for not necessarily going all the way across the world, but we yearn for change in the unknown. And when we see someone else doing it, our fears go away because they're the ones experiencing it. So we're like, yeah, do it. Yeah.
It's really ingrained in our DNA. Really, these stories of change have been around forever, and people, like you said, leaving home and things like that. It's we root these people on, and so I don't know. And again, as you mentioned, I think when somebody else is doing it, and we're able to watch them and live vicariously through them too.
Exactly. And then I think it's really important. Another tip for leaving your comfort zone is once you've actually left it, to celebrate it. Celebrate the fact that you left, and then celebrate what the result was, whether it was positive or negative. And that might be another conversation about how to use negative experiences to your advantage to, in fact, be positive, right? So that's another topic, I think. But it's important to celebrate how we leave our comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
And I think courage too. Courage, that word comes up because we talked about so much fear that keeps people from leaving their comfort zone. Courage means working through those fears, right? Courage means facing those fears. So identifying those fears, learning what those fears have to tell you about yourself, having the courage to examine it first and foremost, and then having a courage to use it to motivate you to actually leave your comfort zone. Like I've realized that one thing I've been doing for probably the past few years is if I feel scared to do something that's, within reason, that's not going to I don't know, kill me, which we can get into that topic too. But if I feel scared to do something that's out of my comfort zone on any varying degree, I've been doing this thing for the last few years, maybe even my whole life, I don't know, where I deliberately go into that fear. I deliberately go into that fear because I know that there's the unknown beyond it, and who knows what treasures I can find and what experiences, good or bad, could enrich my life,
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it takes a little while to get to that point, but I think it's really important to be able to go into it willingly and openly and open your heart to it and all of that. And I had a thought, but I can't remember what it was. And I wanted to touch up on what you were just saying in regards to, I'll have to come back to that because I had a good point, but now I forgot.
One example of myself leaving my comfort zone and moving into the fear, like I said, it doesn't have to be anything earth-shattering, but when we first moved to Boston, I was terrified of the bus and the trains to operate it on my own. I'm not a city girl. I grew up in small town Arkansas, never was on a American bus. I've been on plenty of buses in Tanzania and Namibia and stuff in South America, but This was different for me. Getting on a bus and using it myself, getting off the right stop, all this was it was really scary for me. But I could have avoided that. I could have just kept taking my bike.
Mhm.
I could have just kept walking, but I listened to myself. I said, okay, I'm feeling fear. I'm feeling fear about this action. What am I afraid of? And it was pretty interesting what I found. I found that I was afraid of not knowing what I was doing and looking stupid while
Status.
doing it.
Status again.
Yep. And isn't that interesting though? It wasn't that I was afraid of getting in an accident on the bus. It wasn't that I was afraid getting off at the wrong stop even. I was afraid of doing something and doing it wrong and looking stupid.
That's a very
Maybe
interesting-
getting on and not knowing how to do I swipe this? Do I put these bills in here? Do I, is the bus going to take off and I'm going to fall on my face? Like doing something that would make me look stupid. And so that opened up the space for me to really think like, wow, like what would I have to believe about myself to be afraid of doing something wrong and looking stupid?
Yeah, and it's really interesting. And two, I wanted to say this. As you're going through this, you're building up so much resilience.
Mm-hmm.
You're building up so much strength within yourself. So that fire, it's like almost like a fire that's cultivating and getting stronger and stronger. And you're building up that resilience. So later on, it's a little bit easier each time.
Exactly. And then what I did after processing. I went on the damn bus. I made sure, even though I was scared, my heart was
Now
racing.
she's hopping on all the buses.
I'm on all the buses.
She's on 78. She's
I'm
on
on
74. Even
I
get
could even
crazy
take
go
75.
75.
If you live in Boston, you maybe think that's funny. So, I actually went on the bus, and you know what? I didn't do anything that would, quote unquote, make me look stupid. But now, what if I did? What if my worst fear, which was a really silly fear, did come true? What if I tripped on a shoelace and fell in the aisle? What's so bad about that? And so that's where we kind of start to find the irrationality of these fears.
And you're probably never going to see
What
one of
if-
those people again.
And this is where you want to shift it to the what if something positive.
Mhm.
What if I get on the bus, trip on a shoelace, fall flat on my face? And everybody laughs at me and thinks I'm dumb. All right, big fear. Well, but what if I get on the bus, trip on my shoelace, fall flat on my face, and then a really nice person helps me up, and we end up talking. Next thing you know, we really connect, and we end up making friends, and we invite them over for dinner and go out. Like, what if that's a longtime best friend? So that's just an example of how even when your fears can happen, it doesn't mean something positive can't come from that experience. And now I know that was just a stretch, but that can be applied to anything. I almost lost my life in Africa. One of my biggest fears came true. One of my biggest fears, being sexually assaulted and nearly murdered, came true. But I wouldn't have met you if that wouldn't have happened.
I know, and those synchronicities blow my mind every single day. Just thinking about all of the things that were catalysts.
Mhm.
These are catalysts in your life.
And they all come from leaving your comfort zone.
Yeah, because you had to go to Africa. You had to make the conscious decision to leave your comfort zone and go and join the Peace Corps. And that, was one of the results. And there you go. Circling back to resilience.
Mm-hmm.
You are a prime example, and I admire that out of you, like, very deeply. You are a prime example of resilience and strength, and you showed that through that experience. And for your resilience, and because you were resilient, we met. We met because of that resilience. That's pretty amazing.
And I think when I hear you say resilience, I hear you mean keep living life.
Yeah.
Some people might think resilience means pretending like you're okay when you're not, or getting through.
That's a good point. Yes, keep living life.
And that's what I like about resilience. Resilience is just keeping living life and not letting it scare you into complacency, But even if complacency is what you want in that moment, knowing that it serves its purpose, because all parts of our lives serve its purpose. I've actually desired complacency at some points in my life. Because I might have a leaving my comfort zone addiction.
Yeah, I think we both might on that.
Maybe that needs to be a topic, leaving your comfort zone addiction. Like Chris and I, when things start to get not necessarily slow, because we love silence. We like slowness. We like being mindful and tuned in, but it's almost like if we feel as though there's something underneath us that needs to come out and be seen, we do something that pushes us out of our comfort zone.
Yeah, you do. It's exciting. I think that's might be the adrenaline rush. Maybe there is an addiction.
Oh.
The shadow side of change.
There is a shadow side of change. Is there such thing though as too much change?
I mean, it's all a part of your soul's growth. Whatever your soul needs at that time, whatever your spirit is calling, whatever your heart desires. Like I feel like if you follow that, there is no right or wrong. There's no too much or too little. Like I feel like if you're listening to your heart and you're going with your heart at all times, there is no mistake. Everything is as it is.
The key is tuning into your true heart and not the many layers that we think are our heart.
Yeah, that's more.
That goes to the trust component of clarity.
It does.
Episode 1.
Yeah.
So overcoming those fears, but once again, just to kind of recap, we have to look at where the fears come from, what we believe about ourselves for those fears to be true. And I think I'm going to say that in every single episode, because it always comes down to what we believe about ourselves on a subconscious level, especially.
Absolutely does.
And when we can overcome those fears, not the fears, but the beliefs, and face the fears, use fear as the guidepost to show you where leaving your comfort zone is. Then cultivating the courage by practicing, doing small things to help you leave your comfort zone. And I had a bunch of nachos before this video. I saw it. Burpee. Vegan nachos. They're the best. And practicing building the muscle of leaving one's comfort zone, right? And then recording the process, being present through the process, celebrating the outcome, celebrate the fact that you even left the comfort zone, and then take bigger steps, make bigger leaps. That builds so much self-trust.
And confidence.
So much confidence, even if it beats you down. We don't have to lie and pretend like we made the best decision of our lives when things suck. Like if we left the comfort zone and it didn't turn out right.
It's okay.
We don't have to lie to people about it. In fact, it's probably a huge growth process to be honest about it with oneself.
Well, not only that, but it's good for the other person too. That's an exchange that's really important for people to realize that things don't always, it's a teachable moment almost, and again, it shows vulnerability.
It does. And I'm thinking of that dream that I'm not going to talk about here because I did on a Facebook Live video, but when I was really scared in my dream about something and my cousin looked at me, he said, well, maybe now's the time to face your fears, to prove to yourself that you're going to be okay.
And everything's always okay. That's really what it comes down to. Everything's okay.
Now's the time to face your fears, to prove to yourself that it's going to be okay.
Wow.
That's really profound.
That's quotable.
It is. It's really profound too, because we won't know unless we do it. And I remember my dream, I couldn't argue with him. I was like, oh, well, shit, you're right. Well, let's go do it then.
That's quotable. Sure.
And then I ended up having the most adventurous, fun dream I've ever had. Well, not ever, because I have some really fun, adventurous dreams. But I ended up having a great time in my dreams.
She's like Inception. She gets stuck in her dreams.
I do get stuck in my dreams.
It's incredible to realize after you've overcome that fear, realizing it in that moment in time, oh my gosh, this is incredible. This is so liberating, so freeing.
It is.
because it's one less weight that you're carrying. We're all carrying so much weight on our shoulders. It's so much tension, so much. This fear is just like bog us down. It's
Because
draining.
these fears are trying to show us what we truly believe about ourselves.
Exactly.
If we could transmute all of our limiting beliefs into something powerful, something empowering and inspiring and uplifting, we wouldn't have these fears to the degree that we do.
It's true.
And these fears are not our enemy, they're our best friends. They want to show us where we need healing so that we can do the things that are in alignment with our truest selves. So I want to challenge all of you guys to do something tomorrow. Think of something. It doesn't have to be huge. Think of something that would push you out of your comfort zone.
I know everybody has one thing for sure.
What would you do tomorrow to push yourself out of your comfort zone?
You're gonna put me on the spot like that?
Think about it.
I have to think about that for a second.
I'm thinking about mine. What could I do tomorrow that would help push me out of my comfort zone?
So we're always doing something, it feels like. I'm trying to think of something. Got anything?
That goes to show you how much we're always leaving our comfort zone because we can't.
It's kind of scary. It's almost like we said, it's like an addiction.
Maybe we need to do the opposite and say, what do we need to do tomorrow that keeps us in our comfort zone?
Maybe.
But that's something to reflect on, seriously. And you know what? Make a list. Yeah, make a list of things that you would like to do that would be pushing you out of your comfort zone, even things that you wouldn't necessarily like to do, but things that you know would help push you out of your comfort zone. Make a list of those and maybe choose one a week or one a day, however ambitious you want to be, and experiment. See what happens. Build that self-trust. Prove to yourself that it's going to be okay. You're fucking resilient. Everybody
is. It's just everybody's gotta harness that and get down to that. It's an amazing process to watch somebody go through that too. Like your family and your friends who you may not think are paying attention to you doing this, they're sitting in the background like, oh my God, like that's pretty amazing. That's pretty cool. You know, like that's inspiring. That's motivational.
But even if it wasn't, could you still do it? Even if it didn't matter, could you do it for yourself? And I think that's really important.
I think it is too, yeah, because that's what I was just saying, plays back into status too. But at the same point, it does help other people because if we're all growing, if we're all changing, this world is a completely different place. You know, I feel like the world's stagnation right now and everything that's going on and all of this stuff is due to complacency. We need change. We need to be revolutionary within ourselves, you know, change ourselves, and then the collective changes. That's all, you know, Gandhi obviously, be the change you wish to see in the world. And it really does come down to that. It's that individual effort of going within yourself, and then it's a ripple effect, and everything around you changes, and it's pretty incredible.
It absolutely. That's it right there. That's what leaving your comfort zone can do for yourself. That's what it can do for the world. So challenge yourself, and we're going to think about it too. Challenge yourself to do something tomorrow to help you leave your comfort zone and just experiment. Have fun in this life. Use that adrenaline as something positive, right? That comes with facing your fears, and just see what happens. You know, I mean, I think a lot of it too is maybe people are afraid of losing something big. Like, well, what about having a roof over my head, or death? What about death? You know, what if, because a lot of times when I do the fear rabbit hole with someone who is afraid to leave their comfort zone, I'm like, well, what are you afraid of? XYZ. Well, what's under that? XYZ. Well, what are you most afraid of? And then what are you afraid of about that happening? What's so scary about this happening? Next thing you know, you're going down this rabbit hole of fears, and they find the bedrock fear. And a lot of times it's dying alone, dying in general, not having a roof over one's head.
And those are pretty valid, you know, like that's, I don't know, you know, obviously we've had a lot of years of talking about this sort of stuff, but I think when you first start thinking about it, it's overwhelming. It's super overwhelming. So that's when I pull back. I don't know if I want to do this. I don't know if this
But
is
the
really-
interesting thing is when we go down that fear rabbit hole, they find along the way, they find points where they're like, but what's the chances of this even happening?
Yeah.
You start up here.
Yeah, it's all
Taking this
crazy.
job, right? Taking this job that is terrifying, you wouldn't normally do. Somehow you end up at the end of the rabbit hole, you're afraid to die. It's like, okay, at what point along this fear rabbit hole did this start to become pretty irrational, like pretty, statistically nearly impossible, right? So then they start to see, okay, I see what I'm doing. I am telling myself these stories based off of something that's so far away from me. Not impossible, but if we can kind of create our reality, I don't know why I said that, if we can create our realities the way that we do, can't we see that those fears, if untreated, I don't really like using that word, but if the beliefs that power the fears go untreated, can't we see that that's already creating our reality? That's already making life miserable or difficult as hell to get through?
That's another topic, manifestation. We'll have to really.
That's going to be like 10 topics.
Yeah, that's a part 10, 10 parts. But yeah, no, absolutely. Again, I think just to wrap this up, we really do just want to encourage you to really think about this and really dig deep within yourself. Take the time to dig deep within yourself and really push yourself a little bit. I think
have fun with it.
Yeah. Honestly, I'm not gonna lie. We treat life like it's like an experiment.
It is an experiment.
It's a science experiment. And that sounds kind of weird to some people probably, but it's an experiment. Let's have some fun, and live a little on the edge.
I think when you have when you've looked at death in the face, it's a little bit easier to leave your comfort zone often. And I don't know what your excuse is for being able to leave your comfort zone so well. I guess I had to leave my comfort zone to even get to that point. So at some point, there was a belief within us that we felt we were capable.
Well, the death experiences, what happened to me 2 days after you, I almost got killed by the semi truck. That was one of my biggest things too.
That's true. But you don't have to have that near-death
experience. No, you don't.
to want to be motivated to leave your comfort zone. That's what this conversation is about.
Yeah.
And I also want to ask you guys, if you're watching this now, if you're watching it later, come back to us too and leave a comment letting us know what you did to leave your comfort zone. What did you do to push yourself? And what was the result? What came out of it? And now what have you learned about yourself through the process? So that's your homework. Do something to leave your comfort zone and drop a line in the comments letting us know the experience. And most importantly, what you gained from that experience, what you learned about yourself through the process.
And if this is something that you really want to get started on, start recording it. Start recording your journey. It'll be really cool to look back and see all of that. So I definitely recommend that, and I encourage that for sure.
And if anybody has any questions, please feel free. This is live so that we can have this interaction. I see we have a wonderful comment.
Kim.
Hi, Chris and Sarah. It's Kim. Great topic. Yes. Now, this is a woman who has been doing wonderful with leaving her comfort zone. And so I'm really just excited to know people who are motivating themselves to grow by doing things that are not always super cozy. And I want to meet more of you guys. So let us know. And remember, we have a whole list of topics that people have requested us to cover.
Yep.
We can check leaving your comfort zone off the list. Be sure to submit your topics by also commenting below.
Yep, and we'll look at that and add it to the whiteboard.
Wonderful.
We'll see you guys soon. Take care.
Bye.